Imagine telling a teenager today that your phone used to be attached to the wall and shared with your neighbors, or that your milk came straight to your doorstep in glass bottles. In the 1950s, life was simpler, but also stranger. Let's explore the things from the 1950s that today's kids might never understand, but that we remember like it was yesterday. Milk deliveries and ice boxes. Before grocery stores had endless aisles and cold milk in plastic jugs, there was the milkman. He wasn't just a delivery guy. He was part of the family routine. He showed up early in the morning with chilled glass bottles clinking in a metal carrier, left them at your doorstep, and took the empties. Sometimes there was cream at the top, thick, rich, and meant for special occasions. And let's not forget the small paper lids you had to peel off before pouring. Kids today may drink almond milk and oat milk, but they've never felt the excitement of fresh milk arriving while they were still in their pajamas. Back then, you didn't have a modern fridge. You had an ice box, and that name was literal. Blocks of ice were delivered and placed inside to keep your food cold. You'd hear it crackle as it melted slowly through the day. It wasn't convenient, but it had charm, and it made the little things feel earned. Party lines and rotary phones. Phones in the 1950s were big, clunky, and solid enough to survive a tornado. But the real twist? You didn't always have the line to yourself. Many homes had party lines, which meant multiple households shared the same phone line. You'd pick up the receiver and hear someone else already talking, and you had to wait your turn. Imagine explaining that to a kid glued to TikTok. Rotary phones were a workout. You had to spin the dial for each number, and if you messed up, even on the last digit, you had to start all over again. No speed dial, no caller ID, just the voice on the other end and the hope it was the person you meant to reach. And you know what? That meant something. Conversations were intentional. You didn't waste time scrolling. You made the call, had the chat, and hung up. TV dinners and black and white screens. Long before Netflix binges, we had something far more mechanical. The television was a piece of furniture, big, bulky, and housed in polished wood with tiny black and white screens. There were 3 channels, and when the president came on, everything stopped. TV shows like Leave It to Beaver, The Honeymooners, and I Love Lucy were family events. You sat together, laughed together, and when the static started, you got up and adjusted the antenna. No remote control, just legs. And then there were TV dinners. They came in foil trays with compartments, mystery meat, mashed potatoes, a square of brownie. You popped them in the oven, no microwaves yet, and dinner felt futuristic. Freedom until the street lights came on. In the 1950s, your best friend was your bicycle. No GPS, no tracking app, just your 2 wheels, a banana seat, and a whole afternoon ahead. Parents weren't helicoptering. They trusted you to explore, to scrape your knees, and to be home by dinner time. You could ride to the local corner store for a bottle of pop or a pack of baseball cards, or head to the creek and catch frogs with nothing but a tin can and some twine. There were no play dates scheduled by adults. You just showed up at someone's house, knocked, and hoped they could come outside. You figured out friendships on the fly. No filters, no feeds, just face-to-face fun. Pen pals and real mailboxes. Before emails and emojis, if you wanted to keep in touch with someone far away, you wrote them a letter. You found the right stationery, used your best handwriting, and poured your thoughts onto paper. Then you licked a stamp, dropped it into a big blue mailbox, and waited, sometimes for weeks. And when that envelope finally showed up with your name on it, it was magic. You read every word twice. You tucked it into a drawer to keep forever. Pen pals weren't just for fun. They were your connection to the world. Whether it was a cousin across the country or a kid you met through a school project, those letters taught patience, storytelling, and genuine curiosity. Soda fountains and 5 and dimes. Back in the 1950s, if you wanted a treat, you didn't run to Starbucks or scroll on a food delivery app. No, you went down to the soda fountain at the local 5 and dime store. There was a long counter with red vinyl stools that spun if you gave them a good whirl. Behind it stood a smiling clerk in a white cap who'd scoop out real ice cream for your root beer float or mix up a cherry Coke by hand. No machines, no pumps, just syrup and carbonated magic. You could buy everything from bobby pins to marbles in that same store. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. You'd browse through racks of comic books, maybe pick up a Slinky or a paddleball, and head out with a small brown paper bag filled with penny candy. Dress codes. Just to go to the grocery store. Believe it or not, people in the 1950s dressed up to go almost anywhere. Going to the grocery store? You wore a nice dress and maybe a matching handbag. Heading to the gas station? You were in slacks and a tucked-in shirt. For women, curlers, lipstick, and gloves weren't just for church. They were everyday staples. Men wouldn't think of leaving the house without combed hair, polished shoes, and a belt. There was a kind of respect embedded in the way people presented themselves. Respect for others, and for the simple act of being out in the world. No sweatpants, no pajamas in the checkout line. Not even jeans unless you were gardening. Real toys and outdoor imagination. Kids in the 1950s didn't need tablets to have fun. They had jacks, yo-yos, slinkies, cap guns, jump ropes, and imagination. Lots of it. A cardboard box could become a fort. A stick could be a sword. A vacant lot? That was a kingdom. You'd ride your bike in a wide loops around the block, or build ramps with old boards and bricks and see who could jump the farthest without crashing. You usually did crash. Hopscotch, marbles, Red Rover, and Kick the Can filled entire afternoons. There were no push notifications, no YouTube distractions, no "Are you still watching?" messages. Just real-life fun. Toys didn't talk to you or light up. You brought them to life. You gave them voices, stories, and adventure. School was strict, and you respected your teacher. Back in the 1950s, school wasn't just about education. It was about discipline, structure, and respect. You stood when the teacher entered the room. You didn't talk back. And if you got out of line, you might get a swat on the hand with a ruler, or worse, a call home. Desks were bolted to the floor, pencils had to be sharpened by hand, and everything was written in longhand cursive. No typing, no spell check. If you didn't know how to diagram a sentence, you were in trouble. Every morning started with the Pledge of Allegiance and sometimes a prayer. Lunch came in metal lunchboxes with thermoses that smelled vaguely like yesterday's soup, and recess meant jumping rope or playing tag until the bell rang. Automobiles were dreams on wheels. In the 1950s, your car wasn't just transportation. It was a statement, a work of art, and sometimes even a second living room. Those long, gleaming Chevys and Fords had chrome so shiny you could see your reflection in it. They had wings, tail fins that looked like they could take off, bench seats that let the whole family squeeze in, push-button radios, manual roll-down windows, and steering wheels the size of hula hoops. And if you were lucky enough to go to the drive-in movies, you parked your car in the gravel lot, clipped a speaker onto the window, and watched a double feature under the stars with popcorn on your lap. There was no GPS, no backup camera, and no digital dashboard. But the car had soul. You didn't lease it, you loved it. You waxed it on Saturdays and showed it off on Sundays. Record players and the sound of Saturday night. Before streaming, before Spotify playlists, and long before earbuds became glued to our heads, there was the record player. And in the 1950s, having a stack of 45s next to your turntable was like owning a personal jukebox. You'd drop the needle gently, hear that soft crackle, and then boom, Elvis, Buddy Holly, Little Richard. The music felt alive, echoing through the house as you practiced your dance moves in the mirror or spun in your socks across the linoleum floor. Each record had an A-side and a B-side, and if you were lucky, both were hits. You memorized every lyric, not because they were handed to you, but because you played them over and over again. Music wasn't background noise, it was an event. You felt the music. You held it in your hands. And when your friends came over, you played DJ, stacking the records just right, planning the perfect soundtrack for a Saturday night. Sunday drives with no destination. In the 1950s, the Sunday drive was a weekly tradition and a small adventure all its own. There was no GPS, no real plan. You just piled into the car after church, maybe with a sandwich wrapped in wax paper or a thermos of lemonade, and headed out to nowhere in particular. You rolled the windows down, felt the breeze in your hair, and watched the countryside blur by in soft colors. Sometimes you stopped at a roadside stand for a peach or an ice cream cone. Sometimes you didn't stop at all. The whole point was to spend time together, see the world outside your neighborhood, and enjoy the ride. No phone screens, no distractions. Just family, conversation, and the hum of the road. The Sears catalog, Amazon before Amazon. Long before one-click orders and online wish lists, the Sears catalog was the dream factory for every American home. When it landed in the mailbox, thick, glossy, and bursting with possibilities. It felt like Christmas morning. You'd flip through page after page of toys, dresses, furniture, even entire house kits. You circled things you wanted. You dog-eared pages and left it open on the kitchen table, hoping someone would notice. It was more than shopping. It was aspiration. Sometimes you ordered something and waited 6 to 8 weeks for it to arrive. And the funny thing is, it wasn't frustrating. It was exciting. The anticipation was part of the magic. The neighborhood was your whole world. In the 1950s, your neighborhood wasn't just where you lived, it was your universe. Everyone knew everyone. You didn't lock your doors and you knew who baked the best pie on the block. Summer evenings smelled like cut grass and charcoal grills. You could hear the screen door slam from down the street, and kids shouted from yard to yard like they were all one big family. You borrowed sugar from next door and returned the dish washed and dried. When someone was sick, casseroles showed up without being asked. When someone had a baby, the whole street celebrated. Birthdays meant homemade cakes, and Halloween meant pillowcases full of candy from people you actually knew. It wasn't perfect, but it was personal. The corner lot wasn't just where you rode bikes, it was where you scraped your knee, found your first frog, or had your first kiss. So now it's your turn. What do you remember from the 1950s that kids today just wouldn't understand? Drop your memories in the comments. I'd love to read them. And if this video stirred up a few smiles, don't forget to like and subscribe.